This show is brought to you by Kratzmann Caravans, their RV Super Centre out there at Burpengary, Kev. For over 40 years, Kratzmann have been the starting point for Australian caravans and motorhomes. They are the benchmark. You want to go away? You want to pull a caravan? You want to have a motor? You think of Kratzmann. It's that easy. They've been that good.
Yeah, it certainly makes sense to me, Dobbo. I mean, just up there at
Burpengary,
aren't they? Just off the freeway there.
On the Bruce Highway. This year is their biggest ever sale. They are having an event sale.
What sort of? Tell me how big the sale is.
Well, mate, they've got things. They've got RVs, $20,000 off a caravan. Like that alone, that's up to. I mean, these guys. They're not just saying, come out, we'll take a couple of bucks off it. Thousands.
That's big money.
Thousands. Now, what you need to do is...
Hey, that's big money even for you in your terms, because you live in the world of money, don't you?
Pot kettle. What you need to do is you need to go out there to Kratzmann and their RV Superstar end of season, end of financial year sale and say, listen to Dobbo and Kev. I watch Inside Ball.
Show me the money.
Let's go, baby. I want to pull a motor. I want to pull a caravan. I want to take a motor home to Longreach. We're going to be in Longreach next week.
Looking forward to that.
We will see Kratzmann Caravans parked out there. There's nothing sure. They'll be out there. We might even take some happy snaps of it as well. So make sure you tell them that Inside Ball is where you heard this. Go and get yourself a caravan. If it's now the time you want one, just even make an inquiry. They will look after you. Kratzmann Caravan, the best in the business.
Okay, welcome to the Inside Ball. We got a really special guest today, one of the best of all time, one of my favourite players, I've got to say, Shane Webcke. Now, welcome, Webby.
Kevie, thank you. Who's this fella?
That's Ben Dobbin.
Ben Dobbin, yeah.
From rural
Also, Shane's part of the Triple M NRL call team.
Yeah,
he's part of my call team.
A very minor part.
Yeah,
we would say.
Right. Let's get stuck. Let's get stuck into your career, mate.
All business today, aren't
you? No, we're gonna have some fun here. You know, I'm all about fun. Right. I just want to go through your record a bit here first. Right, 4-time premiership winner, 97, 98, 2000, 2006. You retired a premiership winner. That must have felt good.
Oh, mate, I always when I look back on how lucky I was in my whole career. That would have to be one of the luckiest days. I mean, to finish, it wasn't really, in terms of retirement, I wasn't really ready to go. My knee was crook and this was crook, and for a lot of reasons I thought it was the right time. To be lucky enough to go with a premiership on the last day, unbelievable.
Yeah, we've all done that. That's no big deal. 254 games for the Broncos, 24 games for Queensland, really proud moment in your career, and then 26 matches for Australia. You dominated that middle forward for a period there, Webber.
That's a question of
the selectors and
opinion, really.
Right, you did, mate. You won the Broncos Player of the Year, the Paul Morgan Medal, 2001 and 05. Dally M Prop of the Year, 2000. I thought you would have won this a bit more. Only 3 Dally M Props of the Year.
Oh well, who's counting?
Seriously, who's in front of you there? Do you remember, Dobbo?
Petro. It was in front of him. I don't know who else.
And
so you've declared your allegiance there. That's fine.
No, he hasn't been on the show. We'd like to get him on there, but I mean, in all seriousness, let's start from the very beginning.
Okay, we'll start from the beginning.
Where'd you grow up, mate? Talk to us.
I grew up in a little place called Leeburn on the Southern Darling Downs, and I'll always count myself fortunate that was the case. I'll count myself fortunate that number one, I grew up in a small country town. It was a timber town, a wool town. So I grew up with blokes who ran sheep, blokes who cut timber, shearers, and all the rest of it. My lifelong friends that I played rugby league with are all from that town, and I had a mum and dad who had an extremely tough time in a world that was very different to the Australia we live in today. Like economically and financially, things are a lot tougher. And in the years that Dad, he was in the Navy, he went from the Navy, wanted to be in agriculture. In the years that he did that, the agricultural world changed. The price of diesel, interest rates, everything went ballistic, which landed him in a very tough position, landed my family in a very tough position. But what that served to do was give me the most grounded upbringing in the best way. So we had none of the financial things that people look at today and think that.
Well, that you have today because you've done. Let's be real.
Yeah, that's fine.
You had a great career.
What I'm saying is what made that, Kevie, is the fact that we grew up with nothing, but we had all the important things. We had warm beds, full stomachs, and mum and dad loved us, and freedom. And you
can't buy that, can you?
You can't, mate. And so, what I always measured against when I was lucky enough to fall into this Broncos club that I did, and I did fall into, it was an accident. but I had that grounding to marry up with being a footballer, and that really helped me.
The mid-'80s, it was unbeknownst to me, because you're talking about that time, you're talking about 18% interest rates. That I can remember, like, I didn't know about it at the time growing up, but my parents were struggling with it. And that was that period of time. Everything went crazy in the, like, 86, 87, 88. You talk about that, but you had no idea of how tough your parents were actually doing it financially because you're a kid and your parents shielded.
No, we knew. We knew things. We knew we didn't have a lot, but no one did. So it was normal. And so no one thought about it. There was no such thing in our district anyway. If someone got a new car back then, that was unbelievable.
Yeah.
That was like, oh my God. And Kevie, you'd be the same. You grew up in a working class Ipswich in that era. It wouldn't have been any different being in town as it was being in the bush. It'd be the same sort of scenario. Like things were a lot tougher and a lot different than what they are now. Not necessarily better, but certainly not necessarily worse.
Yeah. So what do you got? What's your family? You got a brother? One brother?
I got one brother. That's it.
That's it. The two of you. He's older brother, isn't he?
He's older than me, and before you ask, was a better footballer. Everybody tells me that.
Is he?
So that's
I've got an older brother.
Well, yeah.
Allegedly a better footballer.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure. Yeah, Drew. Yeah, Drew and Brett.
Well, they always said that Drew was the
best.
He was good. He's a red-headed terror, mate. He was gold.
Hey, Webby, where was the first game of rugby league? The first ever place that you played rugby league?
Was at the. I'm just going to have to guess here because I don't really remember, but it can only be one or two places, Clifton or Elra. And I'd say it was Clifton, the Recreation Reserve in Clifton.
Narelle Walters does my research on all of our guests. It was Clifton, mate.
Well, she's the only one in your family who had me do the research.
Righto, so Clifton. So did you have heroes in rugby league growing up?
I didn't watch a lot of sport. I never did. I was just, my head was elsewhere. My brother and father loved sport. They watched cricket, rugby league, and all the rest of it. So by extension of that, I used to like footy. I used to like watching Balmain. I was a Balmain supporter, and I loved Kerry Hemsley.
Yeah.
Because I thought, you know what? That's tough.
Yeah.
And that big long mane, he'd charge.
He calls it a mane. It's actually a mullet these days.
Well, it was
but it wasn't then. It was.
And mate, he'd charge into him.
He was fearless.
And his hair would exacerbate the snapback he'd get every so often. Oh, mate, I just thought that's cool.
That's you. That's how you play.
You ever meet him? I mean,
No.
I always ask about.
No.
There's a story about him that later on that some bloke bought him a pot in Queensland. They passed him the pot and he just dropped it and said, "I only drink schooners," and that's it. And that was him.
Well, I love that thought process too.
That's it.
So that just reiterates the fact that he is a hero.
Yeah.
Righto. So you're signed by the Broncos when you're 15. There's a story behind that, isn't there?
I always want to hear this story.
Well, it's a long and convoluted. Well, it's not long and convoluted, but two. I came to the Broncos in two stages. So I was never the bloke who I didn't make underage Queensland sides, anything like that. So Kevie, you understand what that's like. I don't know about you, what you were doing, but you understand, Kevie. It was those fellas who you thought, and you were one of them probably.
Yeah.
Who you thought, well, they're going to go on and do something in footy. I aspired, like all kids who played rugby league. I thought, if I could make a Queensland side, maybe I could play. Back then, we used to follow the Brisbane competition, and you think, well, I could go to Brisbane and play or something like that. You didn't make those sides, and gradually this dawns on you that it's not going to be you. But by some chance, Cyril Connell saw me play somewhere and offered me a Broncos scholarship. Now, as you know, Kevie, that wasn't exactly an exclusive thing. They handed them out willy-nilly just to tie up.
Oh, I wouldn't say willy-nilly.
Well, not willy-nilly,
tie up the
but
kids
certainly
with
they
potential.
would tie up ones with, and if you had some potential, you had a chance to get one. So Cyril saw something to me that I got this thing, and I thought, well, and interestingly enough, my dad was killed before my footy career started. The only document that had anything to do with the Broncos was my Broncos scholarship that his name is on, because I was only 15 and had to be signed by a parent. And so my dad signed it. It's the only connection Dad has with my footy career. It's right at the start.
You still got it?
Yeah, no, I've got it at home. It's framed, pride of place.
So
anyway,
did Wayne and Cyril drive to Toowoomba and sign you, and your dad was there when?
No. It didn't happen like that. Like I forget how the whole scholarship thing happened, but I had the document sent to me, and then Dad signed it. We sent it back. The way I got signed with the Broncos, because that is what it was, and I couldn't make it to the things that the scholarship holders had. So I was really had no real notion of what it was.
Yeah.
And I didn't really worry about it, to be honest. And I was just playing footy. And so the story is that Wayne came up to watch a game. We were playing under-18 grand final. We were a year young for it, and so I was a 17-year-old. Another bloke was playing, and the other side was Stephen Price. So he was playing for Newtown. Newtown's coach, whoever that was at the time, was mates with Wayne.
Yep.
And so Wayne come up to watch Stephen Price to play. And look, so no one was surprised by that because Price had made all the Queensland sides and he was apparently a gun. And anyway, so it was no surprise that Wayne was coming, and it was no surprise to think that he was going to sign Stephen Price. So two things happened that day that wasn't meant to happen because we hadn't beat them in the season proper. We beat them in the grand final.
Wow.
And Wayne didn't sign Price, he signed me. And I don't know why. And I can't tell you.
Oh,
it was the right decision. History will show.
Oh, yeah, no.
Well, Price, he had a great career
Price
too.
had a good career,
Great
though,
career,
but
mate.
it was the
Origin
right
Australia.
decision for Wayne.
Well, and he saw something to me I didn't see myself. And even after that day, because I actually, during the week, I got as crook as a dog with something, and I actually had to spend, Mum took me, I think I had a night in hospital. I had to beg Mum and Dad to let me play.
In the grand final.
In the grand final. But it was a grand final.
Yeah.
And all my mates were playing. And
well, you faced a bit more decision making later in your life, didn't you? We'll get to that later.
Yeah,
so.
but yeah, it was, and so it was an inauspicious start because the thing is, and Kevie, you might appreciate this, you might not, but a bloke like Pricey knew he was going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So guess what they do? They sort of, if not physically, they mentally prepare and they know stuff that someone who thinks they're going to do something researches, right? I had no clue. So therefore, I get this opportunity land in my lap, and like I had no idea how to treat that. And two things. The other thing is that it meant having to come to Brisbane, which I had no interest in doing. And so I lumbered down here for the one reason I thought this is an opportunity all my mates who played rugby league had lusted after, and it had landed in my lap. A contract to play at the Broncos.
What year are we talking, mate? What,
That would have been 1992.
Right. Yeah. So just as the Broncos were really starting to flex.
And that's the other thing. They were pumping.
Yeah.
And so I got to the Broncos as a player as a player proper in 94. And so they'd come off the back of 92, 93.
Yeah.
I mean, it was unbelievable. And I walked into that. I'll never forget the first day I went to Red Hill. And this is as a part of something ancillary, not as part of the playing squad, but to see these blokes, I couldn't believe it. It was unbelievable to think I'm in the same room with these blokes I watch on TV, and that's how I thought.
Yeah.
And that was almost my undoing because I just couldn't get my head around what was required.
Well, wasn't just rugby league interest in Brisbane, was there? There was another interest.
Well, there was this young lady.
Yes, here we go. See?
Who I'd met. And I'd met her at home, actually. We had mutual friends by some stroke of luck, if you like. And it was a party at a shearing shed.
The old party. Now we're talking Dobbo's language now.
I understand those kind of parties.
Well, anyway, and so I met this girl, and anyway, I sort of,
That was it.
I've been married to her for nearly 30 years. So,
yeah.
I can't say the same thing about everybody I've been to shearing
But
shed.
there's a real
you probably met the wrong ones at the shearing
Hey,
shed.
Webby, starting off at the Broncos, but tragedy hits, and I know you've talked about it openly, and it almost in a lot of ways defined that you were always going to be a Bronco because of the tragedy and also what happened from there.
Yeah, so Dad was killed. I came to the Broncos as a player, a contracted player, different to being a scholarship and all the rest of it. So anyway, land in 94. 3.5 months later, Dad was killed in an awful industrial accident. And I was failing. At that point, I was halfway through the year sort of thing, so June the 21st in 94. Halfway through the year, and I was failing in terms of what was expected of me. And Wayne would tell you, and he told me later on, they were ready to let me go and just thought, okay, we've made a mistake. And that was fine. I didn't care. I was going to go home. Yeah. Then Dad was killed. And what that served to do, and it's never been as shallow as, Dad was killed and I did it for him. Bullshit. That had nothing to do with it. It just changed my perspective. What I thought was the most important thing that was ever going to happen to me, being a rugby league football player, meant nothing. Because up against what had just happened to Dad, it just entirely changed my perspective and sharpened it up. And so that meant, and to the other part of your question, that's why I got a footy career, because of the change in perspective. But the reason I would never leave the Broncos is because what Wayne did for us. Now, and when I tell this story, people often say to me, well, he was the coach of the Broncos, you're playing at the Broncos, of course he's going to go to your dad's funeral, because that's what he did do. Anyway, so he lobs at Dad's funeral, which was on a Friday morning. And the 21st of June 1994 was the morning after the second state of origin. And so that's when Dad was killed. And by some miracle, and I only looked at this a couple of weeks ago for some reason, we buried him 3 days later. I mean, that's like record pace.
Yeah.
Anyway, so forget that. So we go to Dad's funeral, and you can imagine we're a family in utter shock and pain, and it was excruciating.
Grieving.
And so then Dallas and I, my brother, we were obviously pallbearers, and we were at the front. And I'll never forget, I walked out, and there was a heap of people there, because, like in a small town, and the whole footy club and all the other footballers were there too. It was unbelievable. But Wayne was there. And people say, well, okay, what's the big deal? Because he coached and all the rest. Well, I'll tell you what the big deal is. A couple of things. I was a maybe Bronco, right? Like I was just one of like a heap of hopefuls.
Were you playing Colts or something? Weren't you?
Something like that.
Reserve grade.
Yeah. And so therefore, the club did what the club would have done, and they sent a bouquet of flowers. I rang Wayne on the morning it happened, and he just said, "Look, you just take." He said, "Don't worry about what's happening down here." He said, "That'll be there or not there later on. Don't worry about that. Do what you got to do." And sent us these flowers, and it made us feel important that was the case, and that was enough. Didn't need any more. They didn't know us any more than that. Anyway, then I saw Wayne at Dad's funeral, and people say, "Well, what's the significance? How does that agenda, the sort of loyalty that I then talk about that it caused?" Well, it's because of this. So we're a little family, right? Just the four of us, and had never made a big footprint on the planet. And my dad was an interesting man, is the way to say it, but he was a great fella. But he was what happens when someone is taken from you in an awful accident like that. You feel powerless, and we felt like ants. Like Dad had been removed from the planet, and that had happened, and the world was moving on, and it didn't matter about us, and it didn't matter, and Dad didn't count because it was just boom, gone, world's going. Wayne comes to our funeral, and this sounds when I say it out loud in the cold hard light of day now, it sounds a bit shallow, but Wayne being there made us feel like Dad was important, because Wayne was as revered then as he is now.
Yep. Yeah.
And him being there made us feel like my dad counted. You have no idea how valuable that was on that day. Yep. And I remember from that moment on, I thought so much of Wayne, and it never changed. But years later, I found out what he actually did. Because of and Kevie, you understand this intimately, because of the sequence of the way the games run and all the rest of it, the morning that Dad's funeral was on was the captain's run for the Broncos. And there was Origin time, and they were doing it tough because it was post, so 94, post 93. They're doing it tough. And as you know, Kevie, the bare minimum at our club is to make the finals. And I think it had got to the stage where you're going to nearly have to win every game to get there. So as you know, Kevie, Wayne's at his best. Like the captain's run, how important that is when you're doing it tough, and how important that day is, and how important what he says is.
At those
meetings, he wasn't there that day. He was at my dad's funeral. So, mate, from that point on, the man could have asked me anything. I would have never played anywhere else. Well, if there'd been enough money. But no,
it was significant.
But it was huge, and it set up a loyalty to me. People ask me what makes players speak about Wayne in such revered tones, and I always say to them, well, I can tell you this story, but the blokes who say it can all tell you a similar sort of story. Not something like I just said, but similar sort of things. The bloke, if you want to talk about Wayne's leadership, it's that he gives a shit about the people he's leading. And not in this fluffy, silly way the world wants to be now.
Yep.
He knows when to give you a kick in the arse, but he knows when to give you a cuddle. And he knows the difference. And that's what makes him such a good leader.
Couldn't agree more, mate. Said that beautifully. Do you remember your debut for the Broncos?
Well, how could I forget, because it didn't last long? Well, I remember two things. Okay. I remember my actual first time I ran on a first grade field was in North Sydney against the North Sydney Bears.
I remember that.
I'd played reserve grade, and so those days you used to sit on the bench, and I'd been sitting on the bench for a few weeks, and you get cold and it's sort of hungry, and there's pies and stuff, and and I'm thinking, and then all of a sudden at the back end of this game,
can you get Webcke ready?
And they said, "Well, Webby, you're on." What? I was freezing cold. There's only about 5 minutes to go. I've been sitting for the last hour and a half watching the game. All of a sudden we're going on. And obviously we were winning. So out I went. And I'll never forget.
The old North Sydney Oval.
Yeah, no, out I go. And it's surreal. And you remember, Kevie, the first time, it is surreal.
Yeah, it's
and
crazy.
I think I'm out here. And I was beside Peter Ryan, who I loved, because he is such a tough bastard. I loved him. And I was real timid. And anyway, something happened. And I was beside Rhino, and I was sort of trying to work out, what do I do, And Rhino goes, "Webby, just kill this motherfucker." And I thought, Yep, right.
That was it.
And away we went. And so that was it. That was the last 2 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
So that was it. And so then, and immediately I went back. So reserve grade used to travel with first grade then, but it was separate, right?
Yeah.
And we're double-decker bus. I couldn't wait to get back to the reserve graders because that's where I felt comfortable. Like I just played, and it was surreal. And my mum had watched it, and my brother had watched it.
They're on TV. The Broncos are on TV.
Yeah, and I think, holy cow! But I couldn't wait to get it anyway. So that's fine. So then, very shortly after that, Wayne dropped Glenn Lazarus and put me in the team. So imagine there's no pressure in that. But we played.
He dropped Glenn. I never knew this. He dropped Glenn Lazarus.
Yeah. Well, Lazo was doing it tough. He dropped him to wake him up, if you like.
Yeah.
He was always coming back. But anyway, so I played, and I played. He put me in the run-on side, which I thought was weird because I thought, you start on the bench. But no, he said, mate, you're good enough to play. You're good enough to play in the team. So he put me in, and I was playing second row. Anyway, it was out at
ANZ
Stadium or QE2.
Yeah.
And in the days, this are Hazelham days before the Lions and that. Like there was every home crowd was like 48 or 50,000. So we were playing St George Illawarra, which it wasn't St George, it was Illawarra before they amalgamated. So it was Illawarra. And anyway, I'll never forget it. I was so bloody nervous. Anyway. So we get there, warm up, and out we go on the field. And that's when it becomes a bit more normal because, it's footy and the ball gets kicked off and away you go. So here I am thinking, this will be the hardest thing I ever do. This rugby league thing, this is now I'm going to find out what I don't have because this is where the men are, right? So I luckily enough, I was a front rower. So in those, we just started where front rowers lined up at the back and took that first hit up, right?
No, the carry.
And so I got that one. And
how did that feel?
And off I went. Well, I was I was so excited, but also I thought I'm going to get killed here. But that's okay. That's okay.
That must be what they do.
I smashed it in that line.
Do you remember who you ran it?
Oh no, I don't. I don't remember who was in the team. But I ran in and I moved this one bloke and sort of.
Hang on.
I didn't die.
I'm all right.
Guess what? It didn't hurt.
Oh, that's even worse.
So then I fell in love with myself. So I literally, like 3 laps later, so you imagine at the start of the game, everyone wants to get a touch. I pushed the likes of Peter Ryan or Alan Can out of the way on the fourth hit up to get that hit up. And so I ran at wherever, and again, didn't die, didn't get hurt. Then I did something I did very rarely. They kicked, I chased the kick. So down I went. And anyway, I did a few tackles, whatever. And I was just so buzzing. Far in front of myself. So then they kicked back and I raced back. And this time, see, I was thinking tries now. I'm thinking I'm going for a try. So whoever the halfback was, Kevie, and I don't remember who it would have been back then, but he was only little.
Yeah.
And I lined him up, and it was like probably the second or third hit up. I lined him up and I thought, I'm going through this bastard. And this is how I'm thinking. Because I just had, it was
You're confident, mate.
Yeah. Anyway, I did go through him. But the fact that he held on to my foot. So I'd stepped through and he had a hold of my foot, and I hadn't been thinking about that because I could see the try line. I was scoring the try at that point. I was 60 metres from the line, but I was going to score. Anyway, so he held on to my foot. He held on to it, and as I tried to step out, I gave myself what they call a high ankle sprain. So what's a high ankle sprain? Okay, I'll tell you what it is. It's nothing. However, if you do it, you can't put any weight on your foot. Yeah. It's not a serious injury.
Particularly if you're 110 kilos coming through.
So you can't put any weight on your foot. 1 minute, 29 seconds, my first grade debut last. Springer come to get me. Yeah. And you can imagine, he was telling me, you got to go, you can't walk on your foot. I said, fuck off, I'm not going. Yeah. I'm not going. I said, you're going.
I've only been here for a minute and a half.
Anyway, I got off, I had to. And so I couldn't put any weight on it, and I couldn't put any weight on it. The doctors he said, mate, it's high ankle sprain.
Syndesmosis.
You are not going back. And I sat there, I thought my life was over. But that was the easy bit. So Wayne Bennett, who doesn't believe an injury is an injury unless it's a compound fracture, I knew I was going to have to tell him what I'd done. I was saying, so he come over, he shuffled over in the dressing shed, he looked at me, because they'd told him, I didn't tell him. He looked at me, shook his head, walked away. Didn't say a word. Did not say a word.
That's tough love.
And so I thought, oh, shit. Well, anyway, I've never been so down in my life. Because can you imagine what that was?
Yeah.
And so then the next week I go on and I think, well, okay, well, that's over. And Wayne comes up to me at training and he goes, do you think you might be able to get your little foot right so that maybe you play with us on the weekend? So he said, I can play again. I couldn't believe that. And so I left no stone unturned trying to get this ankle right, but I didn't get it right. So anyway, then I had to go, you know, it works, Kevie. So the doctor wouldn't clear it, all the rest of it. Wayne, I had to tell him, and he just shook his head and walked away again. And I thought, well, okay, that's over. However, what I'd sort of worked out by then, I thought, well, okay, I'm going back to reserve grade, but I'd had a taste of it, and I wasn't scared of it anymore. Now I wanted to get back to it. So I thought, I'll go back, I'll work my ass off, I'll get back there. And so that was my attitude. But anyway, as it turns out, the Broncos were losing at the time. And so he maintained the changes, right? So what was working in my favour, they were lost again. So the third week, he put me back in. And I thought, you little ripper.
Here we go.
Right, she's on. And so anyway, ankle's right, everything's right. No dramas. But late that week when we were playing, I got like a fever. And that's all right, I don't know. Anyway, so it happened. The afternoon of training, I started to feel really crook. Anyway, I got this fever, and it was a day off, right? So the next day, so I couldn't sleep that night and all the rest of it. And I was sweating and it was shocking. Anyway, I snuck off to the doctor the next morning because it was the day off, right? So I wasn't going to tell anyone because I didn't want to bugger it up.
Missed the game.
Anyway, so I snuck off, but I'm a dickhead because I went to the club doctor.
Oh.
He tells Wayne.
So I went to see Fressy, and Fressy said, "Oh, you've got viral glandular fever." Anyway, and I said, "Oh yeah," and he said, "Oh, well, like it's quite serious." And anyway, I think I had to go to the hospital and get a drip or something like that. Anyway, he said, "Oh, you'll be okay." Anyway, I was crook as a dog for about 30 hours, and by the time we got to the next day's training, all the rest, I was okay, and I went to train and all the rest of it. And
the captain's run.
Yeah, and I thought, oh, no one knows. Of course I knew. And anyway, and Wayne said, "Oh, what now? You've got a sniffle and can't play." I said, "No." I said, "Bullshit." I said, I'm right, mate." And I was right. I'd lost about 3 or 4 kilos of fluid, right? Anyway, I said, "No, I'm right." And he said, "Well, make sure," and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so then the doctor must have been a training, Frissy or something anyway. They said, "Oh, you've got to go to the hospital this afternoon and get a scan on your spleen." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Oh, well, this thing can enlarge your spleen and inflame it, and it's very dangerous." So I said, "Well, right," because I just thought I was fine. So I went up, I had the scan, and I was leaving. Frissy called me back and he said, "Mate, you can't play." I said, "Why?" He said, "Your spleen's enlarged." I said, "I don't care." And he said, "Well, I do." I said, "You're not playing."
Ruled you out.
So I had to tell Wayne Bennett, again, who thinks an injury is only an injury if it's a compound fracture. I had to tell him I had an enlarged spleen. I couldn't play.
How'd that go down?
And I didn't play.
No. Well, it would have been dangerous for you, mate.
Well, so they say.
So eventually you come good and you start playing.
No. This story goes, don't cut me off now. Let's get to the fun bit. Because the next week, he picked me again. And so then you can't make this stuff up. So he picked me again.
Surely you are.
He picked me, well, I'm not. Picked me again. Same thing. I'm right? Bulletproof, no dramas. So the last thing of the week, they said, "Oh, you got to get this clearance from the doctor." Then I thought, okay, this is all good now. Up I go. And I didn't even wait. So I got a phone call. "Mate, you're not playing. Your spleen's enlarged." So this went on for 10 weeks.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So
I didn't play for 10 weeks.
I didn't play again that year.
I don't remember that, Shane.
No, I did not play again that year. So, and I tried to play reserve grade. I snuck back because Ivan Hendrick was coach then, and I snuck. He said, "Oh, you want to play?" I said, "Fucking oath I do." So I snuck back. I snuck back to play, and I got in all sorts of trouble for it because I still had this enlarged spleen. Anyway, long story short, so imagine the faith that Wayne showed to me after that, though, because that's the first year of a 2-year contract. No, sorry, it was the end of a 2-year contract.
Because we got in the Super League then.
Yeah, so it's the end of a 2-year contract, and he signed me again on the back of 1 minute and 30
Sniffly
seconds.
nose.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, I go back to train and all the rest of it, and by this stage, again, I knew what it took, and I was fit. I just knew what you had to do then, and I was right. And so I thought, right, I'll do this. Anyway, I started the year in reserve grade. And the first thing I had to do, because I had to go and get this thing ticked off again, so I went and had the the scan. Anyway, and I wasn't even worried. It was out of my mind. It was months before that then. Look, it was 12 months ago almost. Yeah. So I wasn't worried about it. So, but then Frissy called me back, or whoever it was, calls me back, and they said, listen, your scan. I said, yeah. I wasn't worried about it. He said, your spleen's, still the size it was.
What?
And I said, what? How can that be? He said, no, wait. He said, there's no problem. He said, you've just got a big spleen.
The whole time.
So if you scan it again today, she's the same size.
It's the same size.
Yeah. And look, not that I'm not having a crack at any of these doctors because they're only doing what was right.
And you're protecting you. Really.
Exactly. So there's no animosity. But then, like probably 6 weeks after that, I think I made my second first grade debut, and I stayed there for the rest of the time.
So that was 96, right? Was that 90?
94, the back end of 95. Yeah, it was 96.
So coming to the Super League.
96, yeah, it was 96.
So you were a part of the Super League era. Did you cash in on the Super League?
No, because like the likes of yourself, Alfie, all of them, you took all the money and us the unleashed. But no, to be honest, Kevie,
still good day,
I wasn't part of the decision making. I was out of that because 96 was the real start for me.
Yeah,
and so I was out of all of that.
You were just following sheep, weren't you?
We're just doing what we had to do.
Yeah,
and we got a little kick on for it, but we didn't get any. There's no
that was
for us,
later to come, wasn't it?
So your first premiership was the Super League premiership, your 97 one. Yes. You remember that? Obviously, and in that same year, you would have played. Did you play in the Queensland Tri-Series?
You played Tri-Nations
as well. Yeah. So that would have been pretty special. I mean, it
was unbelievable, and people make light of the Super League year because the competition was split in half, which I remind them was split in half. So the other half was only half too. So, but they'll count that as the real one, and ours wasn't. But for me, it was the first time I played for Queensland in my life. And so it was enormous. And then at the end of the year, I was picked to play for Australia. So those two things I count as that's the first time it happened for me, and it was real to me.
Well, it's real. It's real.
Yeah,
that's
bloody as it is.
Yeah, but it was the next year, and that's what drove us, Kevie. You'll remember in 98. 98 was the best footy team I ever played in. 98 was
a good side.
It was unbelievable, and that's what drove us because of the 97 year where we beat Cronulla here in front of 100,000, whatever it was.
Huge.
It was great. But that's what drove us because, everyone was sort of saying, well, it was only half a competition.
Well, Newcastle won the other competition.
That's right.
You remember playing them early in the season? It was about round 6 or 7. You mightn't remember.
Not really, but
yeah, but
we were just doing the work you would have been thinking.
Well, that's what you did. You were doing the work because you're up against Harrigan and this Newcastle forward pack, and they were pretty good. They were a good side the night.
Yeah.
The Johns boys, and Gidley and all those fellas. And we beat them that night. I still remember it. Which I thought then, well, hang on, there's something going on here. We got something going here. When you beat, because there was a lot of rivalry between the two competitions coming back together and the like, but I knew that our forward pack with this fella in it, Lazo had left, he'd gone to Melbourne. So this young brigade coming through, it was him, Thorny, Petro,
Peter Ryan,
Gordon
Tallis, Tunza, just all these mad young blokes.
It was the best footy team I've ever played in, ever.
The 98 side.
The 98 Broncos side was the best.
Well, there was a lot of Queensland players and Australian players in it, wasn't there? So what do you remember about the 98 season then most? The grand final, big one?
Yeah, the grand final, I remember, because I'd always talk to Mum on grand final day. And for years it was sad for us because Dad wasn't there and all the rest. And eventually that started to wear off a bit, but Mum said, how yous go today? I said, we win today, Mum. And she said, you can't say that. I said, Mum, we will win. I said, make no mistake about it, we win today. And that's just how I felt.
Even at half-time?
Yeah, well, but you did. You just sort of knew. I just sort of knew we'd get there. And that was a measure of the footy team that it was. But 98, and I think that... I can't remember, Kevie. There was change coming to the club because there was an era sort of starting to turn over. But we had a young forward pack like Thorny and Petro and those sort of fellas and Gordo. And it was the first time I really felt like a proper footballer, I reckon. It was just that.
Owning what you're doing, right?
Yeah. Can I ask you, Webby, and I've asked Kev this as well. You're a really humble country bloke, and coming from where you did on the Darling Downs, in 97, 98, like I would say that is peak Bronco mania craziness. Like, how does a country bloke handle that stardom in those moments? Because even now, you don't love the limelight. You much prefer to be out watching country football with your mates. So I'm fascinated. We understand Wendell, he loved it. You know, Gordon, he loved it. But for yourself, how did you handle all that?
No, because you got to understand, it was a club full of humble people. I know Wendell and the likes of Gordon, but at the heart of them, there's humility.
Oh, yeah.
They have that outward, outlandish sort of characteristics, but at the heart of them, they're humble, good, humble blokes. And for the most part, that club was always that. And Wayne agendaed that. He didn't like the and we had our characters and blokes who were loud and laughy and all the rest of it. But at the heart of us, I always thought, and I always respected this about the club, just weren't full of themselves. They were confident, the confident blokes who knew what they were doing. But I never witnessed, and it would have happened from time to time. No one's perfect in this world. But I never witnessed any sort of false bravado or anything in that club. And when we won and won well, it wasn't, and Alf could be Alf.
Yeah.
And we're at the back end of games, and we'd have the game put to bed, right? And he'd be putting shit on. You get to a scrum, and he'd be saying all sorts of stuff to him,
to the opposition.
Yeah, that's right, and just really baiting them. But it was always in a respectful, sort of a funny way.
Yeah.
And the club was like that, and you weren't allowed to get in front of yourself. If you did, these blokes would pull you to pieces. And so I loved it. I just thought it was the right mix of knowing what you're doing, be confident about it, but not being a dickhead, because you don't have to be a smart ass. If you're good at what you're good at, be good at it, but just acknowledge the fact that it doesn't make you're not a brain surgeon. We weren't saving people. We're just playing footy.
Beautiful stuff, mate. Couldn't have said it better myself. You made your origin debut that year as well, 98. Man of the match in Game 3. Do you remember that game?
I don't remember that. But
don't you?
That's...
Well, actually, you probably should. I should have got the man of the match in that Game 3. You're probably right, but you did, and so you've come alive as a front rower in the game, haven't you? That year, yourself.
It all happened. Say, my career only spanned 11 or 12 seasons, so it happened really, really quickly. Like, I was late to get started, and I finished relatively early when I was 32.
You did finish too early. I won't.
Well, my knee was bugging, mate. I remember, and I know why I stopped, because I remember training. Training was my benchmark. Like, I used to love training because it was where I knew that's what I had, was I could work, right? And this bloody knee, which I'd fallen off a motorbike having time trials through a quarry at me next door, Nate. Anyway, so I'd fallen off and busted this knee.
While you were playing football?
No, this is when I was 15.
Oh, 15.
And anyway, we hit it because we thought we'd get in trouble. I'd fallen off on a point of a rock, and I fractured all the cartilage underneath my kneecap. And early in my footy career,
I remember you used to have knee problems. I didn't know because of that.
What it was, I dislocated my kneecap, and it was sitting out on the side of my leg. And I looked at, it's like when you get a finger. The first thing you do when you dislocate a finger, you
pull it back.
I saw my kneecap. I hit it.
You hit it.
And when I hit it, it went back over the bone, and because the cartilage was fractured, it tore it all off. And I remember when I had to go and get an operation and take all the mess out, and they said, you won't play for another 12 months. So I played for another 12 years. And then Peter Myers used to when he had surgeons here, he'd show him my knee. And I used to wonder why. He said, mate, you have no cartilage in there. He said, but what you've done, you've ignored it for so long, you've polished the surfaces of your bone, and it works. And I always had a little bit of swelling in there. To this day, it's still the same. Always had a little bit of swelling in there. And that used to be the lubrication on the polished bone surfaces. He said, your bone surface, you've just used it for so long, it's perfectly polished. And he said, if you lose that, your knee will be buggered.
Will you get a knee replacement, do you reckon, at some point?
Well, I went to see him the other day because my good knee was being playing up a bit, so I had a scan on both of them. And I'm hoping to get to 60 before I have to have one.
But you will have to have one.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's if my meniscus is bulging out on this one. And funnily enough, this is my good knee. My bad one's fine. My bad one is fine. But this one, I just got meniscus is bulging out a bit. When it lets go, that's when you got to get a new knee. But at the moment, touch wood, it's good.
And you've probably said this, and Kev's spoken about this before. Winning premierships for the Broncos, playing for Queensland, but representing your country, it to you, I think you've said it to me, it sits at the top of the tree. Am I right?
It does because the way my brain works, I grew up in this little country town, which had timber and wool and all of those things, and I always thought always thought, because I love Australian bush and all of that, right? And I just thought when I got picked to play for Australia, I was representing all of that. And that was the finest thing that could happen to me. I put that jersey on, I saw that green and gold. I thought, this is Australia. This is a nation that was built on the sheep's back, built from the inside out, if you like. We wouldn't be Australia were it not for our agriculture and our rural enterprises at the start. And then, of course, we've gone in this big quintessential cities and all the rest of it. But that's Australia. And I thought, in a sport that I love, I'm representing our country. And it meant an enormous amount to me. I love playing for Australia. Loved it.
Wednesday night, game 1. Looking forward to it. Can't wait. Queensland preparation, New South Wales preparation. Then we go to Perth. But game 3 in Sydney,
right,
what is where I think the series will be decided on.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Well,
because I think we won. I think we win here. Our track record in Perth isn't great. I know you will disagree, but we just aren't great on the road.
Let's just okay. I'll go with you.
We go to Sydney now. SwiftX, and start your SwiftX experience today. They're unbelievable in crypto. I'm right into it. I've been listening to podcasts. SwiftX is a Australian-based company where you can buy, sell, and trade crypto, and really easy. I mean, beyond easy.
How do you join up?
It is really simple to join. It's that simple to join. I talked about it last week as well, that if you join, SwiftX would give you $20 worth of Bitcoin to start off with. That was the first thing they did. Well, it gets better. Go to our show notes, and we have this super simple promo going. Now, all you need to do is you need to go to SwiftX, opt in on the promo, and trade $100 on their platform, and you go into this draw to win something pretty spectacular. What SwiftX are doing is they're going to, if you go to our show notes and opt in, you get the chance to go in the draw for flights and accommodation for 2, tickets to the game, and also SwiftX will help you with some Bitcoin.
Right.
Now, it's that simple. Just if you're listening to Inside Ball, opt in on the promo at swiftx.com. It's all the links are on our show notes. It's so simple. Now, I can tell you, I'm not the brightest spark. I finished high school. I went to the territory chasing cattle. But I've even got on board. It is really easy with SwiftX. I'm telling you, crypto, don't be scared of it. It is a currency that is seriously going to be the way of the world.
You can buy and trade on there, can't you?
Everything. Do everything you want. Everything you want with SwiftX. Huge supporters. And what they're doing for our Inside Ball family is giving you a chance. 2 tickets to State of Origin, flights, accommodation, Game 3, and some Bitcoin. That easy. Go to our show notes. All the links are there. Thank you, SwiftX, and thank you, Inside Ball, because you know what? What a perfect synergy. Unbelievable.
Beautiful.
Can we talk about...
We can talk about it if you want.
Wayne Bennett tells a story that you were very forthright. You knew how good you were, and
did I?
No, but like how you play. And he was going to play you in unlimited interchange and stuff like that. He'd made the decision. Well, mate, we're going to keep you. And when they shortened the interchange to 8, they were like, right, we're going to play you for the first 40 minutes and then give you a break. And is it right in saying that you actually said to him, well, that's fine, but if you give me 20 minutes, I won't drop a ball, I won't miss a tackle, I'll do as many carries. But if you give me 40 and I make those mistakes, that's on you, not on me.
Well, I said, mate, I'll go flat out for as long as I can. And I said, and then after that, if you don't take me off and I'm buggered, because I'm not going to leave anything in the tank, I'm just going to go flat out. Yep. I said, after that, what happens is on you.
What did he say?
He just shook his head and walked away again.
And he took you off.
And then I don't know.
Can you remember the story? You probably can't. And Kevie, you were knocked out in Origin. You wanted to come off, and Wayne just said, "No,
you see, I wish you do your research properly." Yeah. Kevie would have researched this properly.
Yeah.
I got a finger in the eye, right? I got a finger in the eye. Sure. I didn't get knocked out, but thank you for embellishing that story. I got a finger in the eye.
Was it a Queensland finger or New South Wales?
Well, it was a New South Wales finger, of course.
It was a blue finger, dirty blue
jammed,
finger.
Right, in the eye, and I could not
Deliberate?
see. Oh, it was New South Wales, so possibly. But no, anyway, so and Kevie, you know what that's like, and this thing was, and it was bleeding, and it wasn't that I wanted to come off. I couldn't see because this eye, and then this one's watering with it, and I was all over the shop. And anyway, I said to Springer, I think it might have been Springer, whoever it was, the Queensland bloke. I think it was Springer at that time. I said, mate, I cannot fucking see anything. I said, I got to come off because I said, I can't see the ball to catch it, and which didn't matter because I dropped it enough anyway. But anyway, so, and anyway, he said, tell Wayne, and then he come back out and he said, no, I said, I think it was at half time or something anyway. And he said, mate, what's the go? I said, mate, I can't see. He said, can you see the difference between blue and maroon? I said, yeah. He said, we'll just hit the blokes in the blue jerseys. I said, righto.
That's an easy task.
Yeah.
That's an easy task. Righto. 99, your Anzac Test, we've spoken about that with Dobbo. And Alf retired in 99. You felt pretty ordinary about that, didn't you?
Well, I'll never forget it. Like, it was in we were doing it tough. We were going.
Oh, we're going horrible.
In Townsville. And I remember thinking, because Alf was always such a, and always been such a happy guy.
Bouncing around the place.
And he, after the game, I've never seen him like that before. And it unsettled me enormously. But I just, if I've looked up at a player in my career, it was him. Because he was the captain and all that. So what went with that was that respect anyway. But, mate, he was just, this, Kevie.
Yeah, something else.
The man, he was one of them special blokes. You needed something, he produced it. And I couldn't believe, because none of us, what he was worried about, none of us were. None of us were looking at him thinking, you're the reason we're losing. You're the reason we're on this losing streak.
You might be on your own there. I thought he was horrible, mate.
Yeah, but that's because you're you, Kevin. It's
he knows.
We understood that. But no, and so I always felt that he'd made a mistake because it was only ever temporary what he was. If he thought it was him, it was only going to be temporary anyway. But that's the strength of the man. Like, that's how he was. Eh? Yeah. He made up his mind about something, that was it. And he made up his mind and he went. And it was an awful time.
Yeah, 99, I think we're in the similar position what Penrith are now in the competition. And
we had to have, remember, I think we like 8 games and a draw or something like that. We had to win every game to make the finals. And we
made it.
And we did.
We scraped in, yeah.
We scraped
Cronulla
in.
Got you in
but as you limp in, you limp straight back out. And that's what we did. But we rescued that season. Didn't we, Kevie?
Yeah, we had to, mate. Well, otherwise we missed the finals and all sorts of things. I think it came right down to the last game. I think we were watching it at the ground at Red Hill. It might have been Penrith or someone got an upset, beat the team that sort of kept us alive. So it only lasted a week and we got bundled out the next week. But we came back in 2000. You broke your arm in 2000. That must have been pretty ordinary for you.
Yeah, but 2000 was a big year, Kevie.
It was, wasn't it?
In a lot of ways. For all the things that happened. But yeah, the grand final, the broken arm thing, but you understood. I remember that. I remember that morning.
The day of the grand final, he's come into my room. He said, "You're the captain of this club, this team." I said, "Yeah." He said, "What am I going to do? I can't use it."
No, it wasn't the grand final, Kevie. It was the preliminary final. Because remember, Wayne said, "Mate, if you don't play the preliminary final, you're not playing the grand final."
Right. Okay. Well, preliminary final.
This is when I'll come to him.
He come to me looking for a bit of advice. I said, yeah, and he was sweating. He was sweating like I've never seen him like it. And his arm was still broken, obviously. Yeah. What was it, 3 weeks after you broke it or something? So it was
a 12-week injury, he said. And so this preliminary final was going into the 4th week, so it had just been 4 weeks.
And so he's come into my room, sweating and thinking, Kevie, he said, it's not really that great. And I said, mate, just go and see Wayne. He'll help you out. He'll look after you. Oh, great. Thanks for that advice. So he walks up to see Wayne, and then I hear him coming back down the hallway, and he's sweating even more. I said, how'd you go with Wayne? He said, looks like I'm playing. And he played, and honestly, I know that you being out there, Webby, was such just a confidence thing for the whole team. You go and watch that game. You can't use his arm.
Can I? And
that was Parramatta, wasn't it? Yeah, it was Parramatta.
2000, unbelievable season for everybody, and a lot went on. But do you think about what you went through with your dad, what you went through with your boy? You talk about missing the grand final when you're that. It doesn't. I didn't know all that, but it doesn't surprise me with your arm. You always wanted to play. It didn't matter, and you must have had a little bit of fear inside, but you never showed it.
No, I wouldn't worry. And to be honest, I wasn't worried about the arm. I was worried about breaking it and not being able to play. Yeah. Like so if you break it in the first 5 minutes, you leave us with 16. Well, you can win with 16.
Yeah.
But you know
it's
what?
Hard.
And I said this to Wayne. This is the argument I was mounting. And the great Ron Massey, this is the breakfast table. You remember this, Kevie? The great Ron Massey was there, and you were trying to convince me that it would be okay. And my argument was, listen, if I break this arm in the first 5 minutes, I'm going to leave us one short. That's the only thing I'm worried about. So I don't give a shit about my arm. It'll be okay. If I break it again, I'll break it again. And anyway, we toed and froed and carried on. But Wayne, as he has his way of succinctly bringing this to a point, he said, well, listen. He said, listen, you're right. If you play and you break it early and we lose, that will be your fault and that'll be on you. He said, but if we play and we win and then we go on to win a grand final, he said, you will enter folklore. Either way, any of these things that happen, you're going to be doing it by yourself and getting the reward of it by yourself. So fucking you make up your mind, that's what's happening.
And please you made up your mind, you're playing. Good work.
So I played. And we won. So
special year.
It was a big year.
That was your last year, wasn't it?
That was meant to be my last year, but I foolishly came back in 2001.
We all know what happened there.
Wasn't my greatest football, Dobbo, let's just say that.
It's all right. Well, when you look at, you were one of the toughest blokes ever. Did you ever come up against a bloke, in all honesty, that you came away going, geez, that actually did hurt? Like, because you hurt a lot of people on the field.
No. Like, I remember, it was in the 97 Super League series, playing the Tri-Series, whatever they called it. Anyway, Solomon and Mono.
Oh,
I ran into him.
Big Solly.
So I was stupid, right? Because I never watched a lot of footy and I didn't really know who was the other side. So I didn't know the blokes who were dangerous. I just pick out someone to run them. Anyway, I picked him out and I thought, I'm going through you, big boy. Anyway, I charged at him and he charged at me. And it's the only time I've understood, they talk about in boxing, like out on your feet. Well, I know what they're talking about now. So anyway, I'll never forget it. So I ran him and it's the first time in my career I'd run into something and it was immovable. And I shook and he shook. Peter Ryan was beside me screaming for the ball. I give him the ball. Rhino took off.
Yeah.
Then I fell over.
Yeah.
I was knocked out.
Is that right?
And he'd hit me that hard, and then he knew it too. Then he started hunting me all game. He was tough.
Was that in the Tri-Series?
Yeah, it was the hardest I've ever been hit. And it wasn't like he hit me and fell over. Then it was like bush, boom, like this. Both blokes standing, but Shane fell over.
Is that right? Hey, I might be really wrong here, but I reckon that you shaped up
first time in your life.
You shaped up the Furner one time, and he sat you on.
No, so why do we have to? We don't have to talk about my boxing career.
No. I just don't want to talk about it because
there was no career there. Let's get that straight.
I remember he dropped you, but in the sheds later, you were the first to admit, probably not going to pull him on again.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
Right. So that was in an Origin game, and I had this awful habit of being cranky about being tackled. So he'd tackle me, and I'm pushing and shoving. I didn't realise who I was pushing and shoving, but I did it at the end of it. Boom, boom, and it was over. And he's such a good bloke, isn't he? He's a ripping bloke.
Yeah.
And then he was, we laughed about it when I saw him later on. But, I had an awful
Even post-match you said, I'm not going down that road again,
No.
which I loved that you were like, I can remember watching it going, how good that he's been sat on his...
but mate, the thing is, I actually knew that David Furner could throw him.
Yeah.
It was I was cranky and I pushed him and shoved him. And as I looked up, then I saw who it was, and then the punch was coming. Boom.
Bang, bang.
And then I thought, okay,
it's on here.
you get what you asked for, don't you?
So good, so good.
Oh, laughing, but not really laughing, because that obviously not a highlight of your career, but
I got a few of them.
You got a few.
Campo did the same.
I'll tell you another highlight, and I want you to tell me about it. The late great Steve Irwin came down to training in full kit. Have you heard this story?
No.
Have you? This is. Can I tell? And you just add in.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
I'll improve.
Steve Irwin comes down at 2002 or 3,
like that, whatever it was.
1 year, full kit, his car keys, everything. Right. Where's Webcke? Where's Tallis? I wrestle crocodiles. Give me them too. Right. So the deal is, Steve's got to run the ball at Webby.
Other way around.
No, he ran at you first, and then you swap the revolves.
Right.
Let me tell the story.
Okay,
You're just part of the So the first thing was, Steve had to carry the ball into them. Right. Steve gets it, and he's sort of going pretty hard, and Gordy tackled him first, and Gordy just played with the cameras, and this fella here, Buffhead, Gordy, get out. Get back there, Steve. Get back further. Put him back 20 yards. Now run. This is a try line. Run. You got to score the try. He's run it like pretty hard. Webcke has launched himself.
Stop it.
And said, it was crazy. Like broken ribs. No, I'm not going to say broken ribs, but it was Oh, the thud, the noise. Anyway, he's just bounced, didn't he, and rolled, like crocodile roll, and up and he goes. Now he said, it's my turn to run at you, Webcke. So Webby's got the ball, and he's run at him, and he's like, Webcke runs, bumpers up. He set him like cartwheeling through the air. And he's rolled again.
You would have respected him for this.
Well, no, I loved him. I thought he was a hero, right? And so I wasn't and what happened, and this is in the background, because Gordy's Gordy, right? So he wants to be nice and make a little show of it. But I respected this fella. I thought, he's a tough bastard. He's not going to want us to be soft on it. And Benny whispered in my ear, he said, mate, look at Tellers. He said, don't be going soft on him. I said, give him some.
Mate, you came off the back fence.
And so he made the mistake. So Steve Irwin had played a bit of footy, right?
Yeah.
And so he made the fatal error. So when I was running at him, I was watching him, and he just ducked early. And he put his head down early. And the moment I thought, oh, you little beauty. So then I just give him that part of your hip, that hard part of your hip. Just as his head was down, I just turned and give him a little pushka. And he just went, rah. And you see the eyes roll back in his head, and I thought, oh, shit, I might have hurt him. So you won't remember this, Kevie, but I turned around and I ran straight back into the dressing shed because I didn't want to, in case I had hurt him.
Yeah.
But he was all right.
Tunza talks about your training methods, you and Gordy, and Tunza talks about, we had him here a couple of weeks ago, and he talks about how he got better was that you and Gordy, the way you trained is how you played, and everybody else would go soft, but that was one of your big focal points, he said, and he learnt that as well from he needed to be harder. So, and that clearly was one of the, you just talk about it, you did not go soft at training, it didn't matter what happened.
No, and that was like, Brad Thorne was the same. So we'd sort of made a bit of a pack. Gordy not so much. Gordy was always tough and hard and all the rest of it, but we'd made a bit of a pack, and Buller was part of it too. Just thought, like, you know what, we got to play this game. We got to
train like we play.
We got to train like we play, and that's how we used to do it. And it was good. It was really good. And we had some rough sessions, Kevie. You know what that was like.
Oh, I remember.
But we loved, and when we had to do our opposed on our own, we went at it. We went proper at it, and we didn't okay. You think, well, okay, there's a danger of getting injured and all the rest of it. Well, it's worth it. It's worth it because what you do is you increase that. Your threshold, if you like. Increase your threshold of what you think's tough. So when you get out in the field, and it's always tougher, like you keep moving that threshold up. And that's why we were such a good unit. And we just thought, and Tunza bought into it.
He did.
And then when he did, like then we were sorry that he did because he started hurting all of us. But no, and it was just the mentality that and Thorny was a big part of that because he, like, big blockheaded Thorny, that's how he thought. And him and I were roomies, and we used to talk about how, what would the types of drills we should do at training and stuff like that and to get better. It was great. It was great to have him as an ally.
Oh, you would have got a lot of confidence out of that too as a player, wouldn't you? Like,
oh, absolutely, and that's what we felt.
Because
we always felt like, you know what, we always respected. We knew anyone you playing in NRL can play. Right? Yep. They're not there unless they can.
They're not a scrum.
So you knew you always had to work to get what you're going to get. But we always felt like we had done the work to earn the right to go out there and take it off them. And
now you had a little training course as well for yourself, did you? Was that the day off or the day before the game?
Yeah, no.
I used
to on the day off because way back when I decided when I come back from Dad being killed, I played a bit of footy, but I changed. And I changed enormously because I just realised that this wasn't the most important thing I was ever going to do. Prior to that, I was thinking, this is important, this is important, this is important. Come back after that, I thought I couldn't give a shit. I don't want to live in Brisbane, I don't want to be here. So I just went out and played for the same reason I always played. I love footy.
Yep.
And whatever, Wayne saw me come back. And so by the end of the year, I'd sort of started, you start reading your name in the paper because they start the players to watch and stuff like that. Mm. And it lit a bit of a fire in me because option 2 was out going home because Dad was gone and all sorts of things were happening there. So I then, Kevie will remember the Gap Reservoir. Mm. So we used to go out there and we'd run on a Friday afternoon and the whole of the club would do it together. And it was about, 9.5 or 10 Ks up through the State Forest, so uphill and downhill. And then the first hill, like we used to call it Heartbreak Hill, It was unbelievable. It's about 1.5 kilometres up, but it was 1.5 kilometres rise at the same time. Anyway, so it was tough as anything. But I'd struggled with that because I was a kid from the country. When I first went to do it, I thought, well, we do what we do in the bush. When you get a bit tired, you have a little rest. And so it was this little saddle, Kevie, just at the start of it there. Like this little place, you thought, well, this is a nice place to have a little walk. Kelvin Giles, the great Kelvin Giles, head in the scrub there one day because he obviously knew that about us country boys. And so I thought, oh, this is a nice little walk. He jumped out. And in no uncertain terms, he assured us that at the Broncos, when you get tired, you don't walk. Anyway, I had that in my head when I got to the end of the footy season after Dad was killed because I thought, maybe I can do this. Maybe this is something I can do. But how do I get better? And I wouldn't ask anyone. I thought, I can't run up that hill properly. I'm going to make sure I can. And that's as simple as my thought process was. Anyway, so I used old Dougie at the dare.
Yeah.
And I befriended him because it was a locked facility. So I befriended him. I said, mate, I want to come out and run this bloody hill. So in that 6-week off season, I wouldn't have done it every day, but it was almost every day. I'd run out there and run this hill and run that circuit. Anyway, I'll never forget coming back that first week, and Kevie, you won't remember this, but coming back that first Friday of training, I remember driving out thinking, I'm going to learn something about myself here. This has either done something for me or I've wasted 6 weeks of perfectly good drinking. That's what everybody else was doing. And anyway, so it comes time, and as you know, Kevie, like all the forwards would go together. The whole club of the forwards would go together. The whole club of the backs would start as a handicap.
A minute or two behind them.
Yeah. So anyway, off we went, and I'm running with him myself. Remember too, it's all false because I'm the only bloke who's done this. So I'm running with him myself because I didn't want to be a smart ass
and take off
or anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then the forwards, we took off, and then the backs come through. And I thought, well, okay, I'll just sneak in behind them. And so I did. Anyway, Kevin, you won't remember this, but I'll never forget it. Because at the end of the run, I'd won. I'd beat everyone. And what does that mean? It means I was the only dickhead who wasn't at the pub. That's all. But that gave me my footy career. Because at that point, I realised this. And I only won, and I understood that. I only won because I'd been out when others hadn't. But that was the point. From that point on, I thought, if I'm willing to do what others won't, at times they won't do it, I can win. And I took that for the rest. So every day off for the rest of my career, on that day, would go for a run. Now, I wouldn't smash myself or anything, but I'd do a good run.
On your days off?
On my days off. Because that's what I thought that gave me the licence, if you like, to look across that field. And it never always worked out this way, but I'd look across the field and think, you know what?
I belong. I can do it.
No, well, I always thought, well, look, I'm entitled to be better than you today because I was working when you wouldn't. And it's a misnomer because it's only in my head, not anybody else's head. And I thought I invented it and I played for Australia later that year or the year after. It was a very, very close time, right? Anyway, I thought I'd invented that. That's Shane Webcke. So I was on this tour, my first time on a big plane to England. And so I carried for the rest of my career that notion, right? So we got over to England, and it was it's like Kevie. So
Australian team, yeah.
We had a few days on the drink and everything, acclimatise.
Just to acclimatise.
Exactly, you have to be careful. So anyway, so we're in Leeds, and actually it's Kevie, it's all the canals and everything. And so the hotel we were staying wasn't far from the canals. So I picked what I thought was probably the day before that we would start to train. And I thought, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get up early in the morning. Because you've got to be uncomfortable, right? It's not so much about the run, but it's got to cost you something in your mind to know that you've made
got to pay a
price.
You've got to pay a price.
Be sleep.
So therefore, I'm up early and, this stinking...
Cold.
Freezing cold, foggy, nothing around. Out I went for this run. So I think they were taking about 26 players. I reckon I saw 20 of them out there doing the same thing.
Is that right?
And blokes who were superstars out doing the same thing. And it's then I realised that's what the good players do. That's what the best players
100%.
do. And I never left that. I never forgot that. And you know what? It transfers directly into life, like everything else you ever do. You want to stand out. I tell my kids, you want to stand out? Be the hardest worker because they're the ones who win.
I got a quote from Ben Eichen that you wrote and that you sent to the whole team about consistency. And I reckon it best describes you, and I've known you for 15 years, that consistency isn't fun, it's boring, but you've lived by that, man.
I said consistency isn't hard, it's boring. Because it is boring.
Yeah, and that's
people don't fail in our game because you can't get to the Broncos unless you got the talent right.
Yeah.
What happens is they give up trying, and I almost did. That's why I know that. Because I almost gave up trying because circumstance or whatever, call it what you will, I almost gave up trying because I thought I can't do this. That's the only time you can't do it is when you think you can't. So whatever the talent that took you there, it doesn't matter what it is, anything in life, whatever the talent that took you to something doesn't go away. You change something which changes you, not the fact that you got the talent. Yep. It's there. You give up trying. You stop doing the hard work. And that's when footballers are in, and we've all been through it, Kevie, you fall out of form. It's not the god of form taking it away from you. You have changed something. You have stopped doing the things that make you.
Make you work.
And if you look hard enough and inward enough, you will find you have changed something and you're cutting a corner somewhere. Because once you level out and understand what it is that makes you you, and you're prepared to keep doing that, well, you can be consistent. Yeah. And that's as boring as batshit. But that's the only way to do it.
Well, you know, you gave the Blues motivation in 2003. Do you know about this? So Phil Gould, in the New South Wales camp, showed the New South Wales team a video of your first hit-up in an Origin game, and then he showed one in the 79th minute. And he said to them, what's the difference between these two hit-ups? And they was looking around, and Gould said, nothing. His effort in the first one is exactly the same as his effort in the 79th minute. And that's so true, you know, about you, is that whether it was your first carry, your 10th, your 12th, your 15th, it was always the same. You used to come off the back fence like something else. Like, I'm not pissing you. This is you as a player, and that comes from all the hard work that you do to get yourself ready. You can't just go out and do that. That's not talent,
it's
right?
Not what you were talking about.
But Kevie, it was always so precious to me, my footy career, because I realised once it started, how close I'd come to not having it, and I was scared that if I ever, because I didn't have a lot of talent. I wasn't a flashy player, and I didn't have that thing that other players have got. But what I did have is I could maximum effort that I could replicate, and that's what I always tried to do.
Hey, Webby, premierships, you retire, and you unbelievable career, like in every area. But you're a farmer, but the media career that you built, like no one gives you credit. You've had a longer media career than you had as a football career, a first grade football career. Was that anything like you would have been the last person then to be the face of Channel 7 News? Was that a surprise?
Yeah. Look,
which is phenomenal.
Well, I'm not going to go into this today because it's a story for another day. But a lot of things happened in my footy career, at the end of my footy career rather, which steered me in directions that I didn't think was going to happen. And so that happened, right? So that's fine. No dramas at all. And one of them was going footy. And again, you want to hear me talk about Wayne Bennett and why I'm so loyal to the man. So to this day, if I got an issue, he'll be somewhere along the line. If it gets serious enough, I will call him. So I was struggling like buggery because I didn't see myself as working at Channel 7, and I started it, and they wanted me to read the sport, and I dead set didn't see it as me. I thought, anyway. Circumstances in my life meant I wasn't going to be able to do exactly what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. And so I grew up and understood that that's the way. Plenty of the world's like that. So then this thing, I couldn't get my head around it, right? And I said to Wayne, I just can't understand this bullshit way I'm thinking about things. And he said, listen, I'm going to tell you what to do. And he said, don't ever forget this. And I said, right. And I thought, well, this will be good. He said, you know how you used to come and train? How hard you used to go? He said, treat everything you do in life like that and you'll be fine. And it dawned on me. You're 100% right. I went and saw my boss an hour later. I said, I'm reading the sport tonight. And he said, what? I said, I'm reading the sport tonight. And then I read it every other night, 4 days a week for the next 18 years. On the back of that, Wayne said, just treat it like you treat training. And so I treat everything like that now. And guess what? That's what
works for you.
You bought your farm. You built an empire.
Oh, don't say it's an empire.
Can I just tell you one quick? Can I just give you one quick yarn, Kev? That, you help blokes out.
You're off script.
No, I'm off script.
You're off script.
Yeah, that's okay. You're allowed one or two.
Yeah. This bloke had a wood chopping business, like unbelievable wood chopping business. Like seriously, this is like one of the good stories. And to be fair, he bought these blocks and he one way to fund it. He had a wood chopping business. You wouldn't believe it. As luck would have it, I've got some contacts A bloke rings me up one day and says, mate, you don't know where I can get any timber from. I said, mate, actually, as luck would have it, I do know a bloke. I said, I'm going to give you this bloke's number. I reckon he might be able to supply you a semi-trailer load of timber. Well, he's bought 4 blocks since that phone call, mate. And you know what? And I've got to be honest with you, it was one of the best deals you ever got.
It was pretty good.
You think the old butler here has ever been given even a thank you?
This is what this is.
That's exactly what it was about.
My goodness. Hilarious. Don't make me lift the lid on the cauldron of dodgy things you've been involved with.
There you go, Dobbo. So you retired from rep football, Webby, and after the 2004 Tri Nations, yeah? You won the final?
Yeah, we did. And
26 tests later?
I didn't want to but again, going back to that knee thing, it was just getting, and like basically the decision was either keep playing a bit more club footy or keep doing it all and play one more year. So I got another couple of years out of that, so it was good.
Does State of Origin time, does that remind you more about your dad's passing, or is it just...
No, not really, Kevie. I tell you what reminds me, and you'll laugh at this, and this is corny really, but like frost, like frosty mornings.
Right.
It was a real frosty, because where on the Darling Downs where we're from, it's cold, and you get a lot of frost, which is like ice on the ground. And it always reminds me because when we drove home that day, it was a massive frost.
Yeah.
Like he was killed at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So by the time we got home, it was just coming into daylight because we had to come from Brisbane and it's a couple of hours drive. The time we got home, it was coming in this awful heavy frost. And I always equate frost with that morning and losing Dad. And so it always reminds me of it. But Origin itself, it happened, I wasn't an Origin player or anything like that, so it didn't have that profound effect that it might have otherwise.
Righto. And then 06 was your final year at the Broncos. You made the call early in the season, in April I think it was, that was going to be your last year. Did you think you'd finish with a premiership?
No.
Really?
No, I didn't.
Because you were going pretty ordinary, weren't you?
We weren't going well. We had a good team. We had enough. We had enough to get there, maybe. But it wasn't like the other years when we won Kevie, where you get that feeling that we've potentially got this. That never occurred to us. But we just got on a bit of a run, and I mean it'll tell you, like, in the great Shane Perry was our halfback for the grand final. Yeah, and you talk to him about that. He's great and he laughs about it. But he was just in the right place at the right time. He was playing one of our feeder sides, and then suddenly we didn't have a halfback. Yeah, and that's what we went with. So it was one of those years. It was a patched up sort of a side, but it was a good one.
Yeah, was that true in that semi-final when you're walking up the tunnel and Willie Mason said, "Oh, I can't believe we're going to what were they up 20 points to nil or something?"
They were well up, and I didn't hear it, but Petro and Thorny must have, and so I was followed in later, and they were in the corner and they were seething. This bastard thinks we're done and this and that. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, Willie Mason, this is what he said. Oh, I said, what? Anyway, so we got all the fours here. I said, righto, boys, this is what they think of us. And as history will tell you, we went out and apart after that.
Yeah, you did, yeah. And Barrow was instrumental in that too, and in the grand final.
Absolutely.
So you're taking on the Storm in the grand final. What are your memories from that game? Like your last one?
Well, because
tough game, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it was, and I don't remember a lot about it. The game itself, but I loved ringing bellyache 2 days later and saying, mate, thanks very much. It's really special.
Oh my God, did you really?
Yeah, bloody oath.
Oh,
I give it to him, and you know what bellyache's like, wonderful bloke. And so, the grand final, mate, I wasn't one of my best games, to be fair, but it was just I'd had enough, to be honest. Of not of the game. I'd loved the game, and I really felt I was retiring too early. However, I knew that was the way it needed to be. But what I was sick of, Kev, is, like, I don't know if you remember, but because I had a couple of last games, like here. Yeah. So, and it was a big deal. It was a big crowd and everything. And it was overwhelming, mate. Yeah. And I was sick of being the centre of it. I love just being, like, as part of the club, let's go and get, who cares who gets the credit as long as we win. Yeah, exactly. And I just hated being in the middle of all of that. It was awful.
I can understand, because you're a very humble man and you don't like the spotlight or the limelight, so I could certainly you go along with that. Now, Gigi's your favourite teammate of all time,
Absolutely.
Is he? What's the connection there? Why is your bond so strong, you reckon?
Mate, it's difficult to put your finger on. Now that we've been mates for so long, it's easy, because now I know I love him, mate, because he's like me. Yeah. And he's, but you know what I love about GG more than anything, mate? You know the thing that you love about your mates is that your mates never let you down.
Yeah.
That's Andrew G.
Yeah.
Andrew G is incapable of letting you down. and he's been been through some tough stuff. And if you look into the tough stuff that he's been in, mate, and you know this, that man gives nothing up on mates.
No.
Never, ever.
No.
He's as solid as they come.
Zip.
He'll be my mate till we die.
Yeah.
And he is just, and you know, we both love it. The odd drink now and again.
Yeah, of course you do, mate.
Things like that.
Well, you're old mates, you know.
He's just a great fella, mate.
Righto. Who's your toughest opponent ever? Would it be Solomon Hamono or?
No, mate. I always give it. I ask this regularly, and you know, it's too hard to pin down to one. But you know what I say, Kevie? It's anyone else who was on the other side.
Yeah.
And you know that because they were.
That's
mate,
fair call.
If you had if to be an NRL player, you can't be. You have to be tough, and I respected that about all of them.
Righto. You got 4 premiership rings. Is there one that you particularly like, or you just love them all?
98.
98?
I love 98, mate. 98 is the best team.
Yeah.
It's just the best team. 2000 was, for different reasons, and you know what the reasons are, but 2000 was a big one, mate.
Yeah. Now, we have a sponsor of the show, the Kratzmann Caravans.
Oh,
right.
Wow.
Yeah, so where's your favourite holiday? If you were going caravanning, where would you go in a Kratzmann Caravan?
We used to go on a Kratzmann Caravan.
You did?
Yes.
Did you?
We were caravanners, mate.
Right.
See, you didn't know that, did you?
I did not know that, no.
So, the great family tradition of our little
Of the
family.
Webcke family, yeah.
We used to go to Byron Bay, the caravan
Oh,
park.
on the Hooter down there. The Webke's on the
mate.
Hooter.
But the First Sun Caravan Park, and we had a spot. We used to book it every year.
Wow. What, Christmas?
My kids love it. No, it used to be in the September school holidays.
Right.
And we'd park up there, and I used to come back and forward. There was either work or footy, but I'd come back and forward, and the kids, and we had a 3-berther, and three berths for the kids. And toilet and shower.
Oh, so it's a Mickey Mouse van.
Oh, it was good, mate.
Yeah.
It was good.
That's what Kratzmann do, mate. That's their vans,
Well,
mate.
I know it better than you do. I at least was a customer.
Do you?
You know?
Have you still got a Kratzmann or not?
No, we sold it.
Did you?
We sold it. And didn't lose any money either.
No. Well, you don't lose money on anything, you
made
Shane.
then, mate.
You've still got your
then.
pocket money from
Oh,
bloody.
please.
Yeah, there's your holiday one. Your favourite memory for Queensland? Have you got one? Origin series or a game stands out for you?
No. Well, it's when it started. I walked in and there was the old travel lodge, and I was frightened as, right, because again, overawed. But get to the lift, open the lift, who's there? Joppy Close.
Oh.
I didn't know him, and
Right.
I thought, oh shit, there's Chris Close. Anyway, he obviously knew who I was, and I'm looking at him. He looked at me, and he goes, "Are you hungry?" That's what he said to me. He didn't say anything else. "Are you hungry?" And I said, I could eat.
Yeah.
We went to the buffet, chowed down for about an hour, had a great long yarn. Perfect.
Yeah. That's Choppy, you know. He's been, well, again, with Origin sort of every year, he's got that ability to bring people together.
Absolutely.
His stories,
and
mate.
And again, Kevie, talking about the sort of blokes that we love, he's another one.
Yeah, he's another one. Choppy, I always remember Origin, his speeches would normally be delivered by the coach.
Yeah.
He used to deliver them.
Remember
Right?
the one about if we let Wayne down, he's going to expose us all. And, it was big.
That was big, mate. Now, you're into a great career now, post-footy, one of the more successful people that transition. It's hard transitioning, isn't it, from player to whatever your next career move
It's
would be?
enormously difficult, Kevie, and what it is, and I've worked this out over a long period of time, human beings, we're made for routine. And so we come from this rigid, like as much as it could be loose, but it was a rigid, disciplined world where you had to turn up and do this and do that and all the rest of it. And you get used to that routine. I always tell people, I don't miss the adoration or the adulation of playing footy or all of that. I missed the camaraderie of the shed and all the rest of it, but also the bone jarring routine of it all. I loved it.
Yeah.
And so what you got to do when you finish is find something that replaces that, and nothing ever can. Nothing can ever replace what we're fortunate enough to be part of. So what you got to do is, again, and that was Wayne Bennett's advice. You got to treat the things that come. You got to find what that new routine is, and then attack it like we used to attack footy.
Righto. My last question to you before we finish it up. So it's an Origin or a big game, grand final. They're kicking off. You've got the kick-off. What goes through, like, so the opposition lining up, they kick it off, the ball's going through the air, you got your catcher there, you know, they're going to absolutely belt the shit out of you.
Mate, I'm feeling it right now and I'm getting goosebumps.
What
Can't
goes?
wait. Can't wait. Kevie, and I know it sounds counterintuitive, mate, it's just a contest, and I think, I'm coming, boys. Let's do this.
Let's get it on.
I just, mate, loved it. And you ask any front row, they'll tell you the same thing, mate. It's exciting. It's not frightening. It's exciting.
Right.
And that drives. That's why you have to just pump those legs, mate, and go as hard as you can. The harder you go, they will not hurt you. Anyway.
Oh, you're crazy, man. Love playing. That's why I love playing with you, mate. Now, listen, I know you don't do anything for nothing, right? This is Webcke. It's the Webcke Empire. No, I said to you. We've got an Inside Ball T-shirt for you, mate.
I mean, imagine
Look at
me
this.
thinking that it wasn't be something stupendous like that. Mate, that's rare.
That's amazing.
That's a rare treat.
There's only 30 of these in the world.
Yeah, and
right?
I'll
and
treasure
you've got
it.
one.
I'll treasure it.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
No, shake hands, mate.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevie.
There's a shirt that doesn't fit you.
Yeah, no, that's great. That'll go with the rest of them. That's
Shane
great.
Webcke, you're a legend, mate. Love playing with you, and I love what you're doing post-career. You've got a great family, kids, and you're enjoying life. Good man.
Thanks,
Well
Kevie.
done.